Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Erzman, and thank you for joining us for episode 47 of our show. Grateful to have you with us today. Well, we're continuing this series where we are getting to know some of the speakers who will be at our USMB convention this summer. And today I'm talking to Jeff Hubrich. Jeff is a campus pastor at Lakeview Church in Utah. And I say later in this episode, Jeff kind of reminds me of an MB Bradley Cooper. He is a former pilot who admits that he would probably rather be jet skiing than going to church most Sundays. And he is just a lot of fun. He's got a lot of energy. I think you're going to really enjoy hearing his story. And he has a pretty incredible testimony of how he became a Christian and now how he is using his past with the Mormon church to reach out to people in Utah now that he's a campus pastor. So I found his story to be really engaging. He's got some really helpful insight for all of us in our churches, wherever we're serving. And I think you're really going to love Jeff if you don't know him yet. So let's just dive right in. Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor and then get to a really fun conversation with Pastor Jeff Hubrich.
Have you joined a Lead cohort yet? Lead cohorts are online meeting places for anyone interested in gathering with like-minded people or learning more about a specific topic. The cohorts are free and usually meet for an hour or so via Zoom every other week for about 3 months. The spring session of Lead cohorts just launched, but it's not too late to join. With 13 cohorts to choose from, you're sure to find one that will enrich your journey. Register today at www.usmb.org.
All right, my friends. Well, today I'm excited to be joined by Jeff Hubrich. He's joining us from Grantsville, Utah. He's a campus pastor at Lakeview Church there. And Jeff is going to be one of our speakers at the convention coming up here in July. So thought it'd be a good chance to get to know Jeff a little bit, hear his story, and get to know him and hear some of his journey today as we talk on the podcast today. So Jeff, thanks so much for spending time with us today. Appreciate you being here.
Hey, my pleasure, Matt. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So Jeff, I think we're going to spend most of our time today, and maybe some at the convention too, just hearing your story. You've got a pretty interesting story of how you landed where you are now. And it's a pretty cool story of how you became a Christian and now as a pastor. So I want to dive into that, but real quick, tell us about your family. Give us a quick bio before we dive in too deep here.
Sure. I'm in my mid 40s. I will be 47 this year. Time's flying by. I've been married for 25 years to my beautiful wife, Heather. We have 2 kids, Cessna and Lance. Cessna is 19 and sings on our worship team at church. So cool. We're very proud of that. And Lance, our only boy, is 15 years old. Really enjoying my relationship with him. We both love riding dirt bikes and spending time outdoors and working on cars. So that's kind of a fun part of our life. The rest of the bio, I spent the last 20 years until July of last year. I spent the last 20 years as an airline pilot. Went into aviation pretty young and decided that's where I wanted my career to be. So flew professionally for 20 years, the last 15 of my career as a captain at SkyWest Airlines. And then along the way, the Lord decided that maybe I should do something else, I believe. So here we are.
Wow. Okay. And when was that transition again?
I said last year. It was actually July of 2020 was the end of the airline era. So quit and started at Lakeview. We had about 9 months there to prepare a pre-launch phase for the Grantsville campus. We launched the Grantsville campus in Easter Sunday of 2021. So
awesome. So July 2020, that was just a nice, really calm season in the airline industry, right? You just, you're just bored. You didn't want nothing to do. You decided to change, right? Just a real easy time to be in the airline industry.
Oh, it was wonderful. Just a glorious work experience every day. The truth of the matter is, Matt, I had been in the industry for a long time. I enjoyed it. There's kind of 2 sides of that story. I love flying airplanes. I think I still do. I don't know. I haven't done it for a couple of years now, but the actual act of flying airplanes, that was fun. But I had reached a point in my career, like many do, you're in your 40s and you're kind of in the meat and potatoes of your career. And I was pretty done with it. I was ready to be out of the airline era of my life. And so there was some real conversation amongst Heather and I about financially preparing ourselves to leave that industry and maybe try something different. Pastoral ministry was never on my radar. I thought I was going to be a Harley mechanic. So that's what I had in mind, but it didn't quite work out that way.
That's awesome. I wish people could see you. I don't know you, Jeff, but you're like a Bradley Cooper guy in my mind. Like you're just I could see you flying planes, riding motorcycles. So you got that vibe about you. I like it.
Yeah, man.
Okay. So so pastoral ministry was not on your radar. There's a big story there. So why don't you take us back? I know you've got a really interesting journey. So tell us about your faith story. How did you start growing up, and what led you to the point where you are today? Let's just dive in.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Utah. Big LDS family. My dad was the bishop growing up. Then he was in stake high council and other leadership positions within the LDS church, Mormon church. And so that was my faith background. Really, just can't say enough amazing things about my parents. They are just the best parents anybody could ask for, right? They love their faith, and they raised up 6 kids in it, and they loved us and cared for us very deeply. My personal faith experience along the way was really off to a great trajectory, for what it was. By the time I was in high school, I was in seminary, LDS seminary. My senior year in high school, I was the seminary president.
Wow.
So I was rocking and rolling and doing all those things. When it came time for LDS young men go on a mission typically, or they have the opportunity to go on an LDS mission when they're 19. And when we got to that point in my life, I was kind of living a dual life, a little duality going on, right? I was doing all the right things for church, but I was, very much living a life of a 19-year-old teenager in modern America on the other side. And so I really didn't want to go. I wanted to go to honor my parents. Maybe I didn't want to have that conversation with them about not honoring them and their hard work they poured into me throughout my life. But on the other side, I wasn't living a life that was conducive with that. So I delayed a little bit past my 19th birthday. I got to have the super uncomfortable conversation with my parents that I had gotten my girlfriend pregnant.
Okay.
Now my wife,
Okay.
Heather. And so that was a tough spot, a weird spot. That pregnancy turned into a miscarriage, and we ended up getting married very young. I had just turned 21, and Heather was 19 when we got married. So we were just kids and really trying to figure some things out. So we got married civilly in 1997, as in not a temple marriage. We didn't meet the church's worthiness standards to be able to do that. A year later, we were sealed in the Jordan River Temple to complete that process in our religion. And we were a young couple living in an old historic area of a town called Sandy, old homes that date well back into the mid 1800s. And we called that area, our church area, the newlyweds and nearly deads. There was just young couples, and we actually had 2 geriatric care homes in our ward boundaries, our church boundaries. So the reason I point that out is it caused both of us to step into roles within the church, within the LDS church, at an age that normally wouldn't happen.
Okay.
So Heather was working with, she was the young women's president, like young women's ministry, and I was the young men's president. And we were living this life where we had this really beautiful up and coming kind of religious look on the outside, but on the inside, we were truly falling apart at the seams. Our marriage was on the rocks. We were both in serious faith crises, really didn't know what we believed. We were just going through motions, and that felt very heavy, very gross. It was just a difficult time. I think a lot of people can relate to that, right? Where you're pretending to be something that you're really not on the inside. So time moves on a little bit. We reached a point where we were going to get divorced. We were done for. And so we sat down one night to talk about that. And in that conversation, we realized there was a bunch of things that we needed to remove if we were going to focus on our marriage and make that work. And so jobs went, we both changed jobs. Many friendships, we just iced them, said, hey, maybe later. You're not healthy for our marriage, so goodbye. All kinds of things. And one of those things that we put on ice was our religion. We said, we really have to figure this out for ourselves. And at that point, we really entered a life of living an agnostic type belief. We believed that there was a creator. I would often say, I don't know who he, she, or it is, but yeah, I think that there's probably a creator out there, and that was it. So Sunday mornings we're at Village Inn or Denny's, and we'd have a super scramble and read the USA Today and catch up on our week, and that was church. Along that road, Heather had stopped working for an office supply company, and she'd started working for an eye doctor. And one of the gals that she worked with, by the name of Jana, Jana was really inspiring to Heather. She was just this bubbly, full of life, super go get 'em type of gal, and about the same age. Okay. Jana was engaged to a guy by the name of Dave, and Jana was a believer. And Heather would come home and she'd talk about this. There's this lady at work. She's always talking about her and Jesus hanging out and her and Jesus doing stuff together. Like, she might be completely legitimately for real nuts.
Right.
She thinks she's hanging out with Jesus, and we would laugh about it. Right. But Jana and Dave turned out to be just really great people that invested in us as friends. Mm-hmm. We were not a religious project for them. Yeah. So they invested in us as friends, and this went on for quite some time. And we reached a point where there was trust between us, where we really knew that Jana and Dave had our backs. They were our personal friends. And at that point where there was trust, Heather and I really started to notice something different about them. And so we started asking questions, and it was through that process that we started hearing the gospel described as we'd never heard it. The Bible says, have eyes to see and ears to hear. The verses and things that Dave shared with me in personal conversations and listening to his testimony, I kind of lean in and, man, I think I've heard that, but I've never heard that. Yeah. I've heard those words, but what you just said never landed. And so there was these little stepping stones along the way. And eventually we were at a barbecue at their house summer night, and Dave said, oh, hey, before you go, I've got a book. I went to an estate sale and I bought a couple boxes of books for $4, and there's a book in there. You can have it. I said, well, what is it? He says, I don't know, Mormon stuff. And okay, whatever. So he hands me this book, and it was a book. I don't even know if I want to say the name. It's not a book that I would regularly toss around. It was the right book for the right guy at the right moment. And if you're not the right person in exactly the right moment, it's not the right book. But what it was is essentially, it went through page by page. It would go through just simple doctrines, basic Christian doctrines. And it had the LDS view on the left side, and it had what the Bible said about that on the right side, and all the references. And it went like that for about 120 pages. I don't know. And at the end of this book, it had just the guy who wrote the book had no budget at all for an artist to come in and draw proper drawings, right? Sure. He had this goofy little stick figure tract of this stick figure guy that kneels before the cross. It was the goofiest thing I've ever seen. Oh yeah. But it landed with me, and it sat on my heart and on my mind for a few days. And I was a flight instructor at the time, teaching college students in their aviation program. And I was driving into the airport for a student one morning, a couple of weeks after I saw that, and I just knew I had to stop and have a discussion with God about this. So stepped into a city park early in the morning, hands up in the air, yelling at the sky like a legitimate crazy person. And that was where I got saved. I remember very clearly yelling at God and saying, man, you are crazy that you want broken, yucky, ugly people like me. But if you want a heaven filled with fools, you got one. I believe, right? Oh, yeah. And so I went about my business. I did not mention that to Heather, which is, some people, why not? What I did was I went home and I handed her the book. And I said, this is the book that Dave gave me. And Heather's a reader, like 10 times as fast as me. She'll read through War and Peace in a weekend for fun. No,
Wow. Okay.
Not really, right? But
Yeah, close.
She digests books very quickly, and she was reading some series, Clive Cluster or something. I put that book on her nightstand and say, "Hey, check this out when you get a minute." And the reason I didn't want to mention it to her is because in the LDS faith, there's the priesthood authority of the home would be mine, and if I gave it to her and said, "My life has just changed, you need to read this book," I felt like that would have been me getting in the way of her walk with Jesus right there.
Yeah, her
and I didn't want to
discovering
stand
it.
in that gap.
Sure. Okay. Yep.
So I handed her the book, and gosh, it was a month, maybe 5 weeks later. Nothing was said.
Okay.
And I walked in the door. We had a split entry home at that time, our first home, and Cessna, our oldest, was just an infant. I opened up the front door, and she was standing at the top of the stairs, and we saw eye to eye, and we both just burst into tears. I just looked at her and said, "You read the book?" And she goes, "Yeah, I did." I said,
Wow.
You hit your knees, huh?" She goes, "Yes, I did."
Wow.
And so we suddenly had this realization that, oh my gosh, I guess we're Christians. Maybe we should find a church.
Yeah.
I don't know. How does this work?
Right.
So, and I promise I'm getting to the end of this story.
Oh, you're good. It's great.
But so the next thing we did was call Dave and Jana and say, "Hey, we've trusted Jesus. We're not sure what that means right now, but that's where we are. Can you help us find a church? Can we come to your church?" Or I asked Dave, and he said, "No, you can't." And I thought that was a bit of a surprise. So,
Okay.
What do you mean? He said, "My church is not the right church for you at this time." He was at a very eccentric church. They were pretty eccentric.
Okay.
Put it that way, right?
Okay.
So he said, "No, it's not the right church for you at this moment." So he said, "Let me make some phone calls." And so he started making phone calls. His sister was singing on a worship band at South Mountain Community Church in Draper, which was just down the way from us. That South Mountain was the first MB church plant in the state of Utah. Dave made some phone calls. He called Pastor Paul and asked. He said, "These are my friends. This is where they're at. Is this the right place for them? Are you ready for them? And are you gonna step on them?" And Paul said, "Nope, we're ready for them. Bring them." So we walked into church for the first time, and our life was forever changed as we met other believers and got a chance to be discipled and led and worship. So
yeah. Man, that's incredible. I love it. I know there's a few steps past that, but maybe we'll come back because I want to hear how you got to your current role. Sure. But I got a bunch of questions. I've been writing questions down as we've been talking. It's a great story. So one thing you kind of mentioned that you were raised in this church. Your dad was a church leader in the LDS. You were a church leader, and you kind of casually mentioned that you just kind of dropped all of that. But I'm sure that was hard. Like, I mean, at that point when you were a 19-year-old, your dad's a leader, you're a leader. It's similar to how a lot of people listening were raised in the Christian church. It was a big part of their life. It was meaningful to some degree. It was a habit. I'm sure you had friends. So what was that like to just drop all that? Was it easier than it sounds, or was it as hard as it sounds, or what was it like to just drop all of that?
There's an interesting reality there, at least for that church culture that I was raised in. There's someone who becomes inactive, not attending church, not plugged in, not in a position of ministry in any way. And then there's somebody who leaves the church. And those are two wildly different things. At the time, where Heather and I were a couple years into our marriage and things were tough, we just became inactive. We just stopped going. And for the most part, others, family members, friends, community, they give you some grace in that. They give you some room to operate in that space. Where it was hard was after we were saved and we knew that we had found our faith in a biblical Christianity. Mm-hmm. That's when I had to be honest with friends, with family, and let them know, "Hey guys, I just want to let you know," specifically to my parents, right? Mm-hmm. "Mom, Dad, I need you to know that I've found my faith, and it's in biblical Christianity. I'm no longer living my life in accordance with the regulations or the rules that you think I am." That was super difficult. Mm-hmm. And in fact, at that time, there was a lot of broken relationship stuff. It was very scary. It's terrifying for anyone leaving that culture. You're leaving potentially family, friends. People can turn their backs on you. It may affect your job. It may result in losing your children for some people, right? Losing your marriage.
Right.
It was that was a terrifying time to be able to step forward in our brand new faith and say, we're going to completely trust Jesus in this.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part of that story is, although 4 or 5 years, in fact, 15 years for some of those relationships, but I believe all of them now have come around where we have healthy, respectful, communicating friendships and family relationships with all the people that it was tough for at that time. But boy, it was a walk. It was a walk for sure.
And I think for a lot of us not in Utah, I'm not, I don't know a whole lot about it, but from my understanding, like it sounds like you were just kind of cut off from, like, it wasn't just that you had a couple of rough relationships that we all have, but it was like you were cut off from community, right? Like, correct. I think it's hard for us not in that world to really understand what that was like for you.
Yeah, you're just suddenly an outlier. The church community within the LDS Church, just the way it's organized, is very close. It's very tight, and the way that this might be foreign language for some people, but the way that the church communities are broken down into stakes and wards, those are area boundaries. It causes you to have really close relationships with those who live nearby you. 5-6 blocks one way, 5-6 blocks the other. Everybody. Yeah. And so suddenly you're in a neighborhood where you are just an outlier. Yep. And boy, you feel extremely alone. And it's a very, very terrifying place for so many people who are in a similar spot. Yeah. And now I get to counsel people and walk with people and all the time who are in the same place. And it's really hard. And it's a different type of hard for each person. Depends on how connected they are and how much of their life is invested there. But it can be very, very scary. Yeah, I can only imagine. So you're in that spot where you are feeling out of community. I'm sure, those relationships are rocky. So I want to spend some time talking about Jana and Dave, because I want to be a Dave. I think all of us listening want to be Jana and Daves in people's lives. So tell me more about that relationship. So did you know they were Christians right away? And were you hesitant to, like, what were they kind of, quote unquote weird, or you were with your faith, you weren't really sure if you wanted to go down that road again, or how did that start? Was that scary or weird for you? Yeah, we knew they were Christians because of Jana's babbling on about her and Jesus hanging out at the park yesterday. Right. Yep. But so, I was initially hesitant. Heather had built a relationship with Jana at work and had some trust built. She's like, no, they invited us to go hang out. I think the first time we hung out with them, there was a bunch of other people. And it became clear pretty fast. No, these guys are just super cool. We can hang out with them. There was just trust built through that. There was a key thing that I want people to understand, because it relates back to how this wraps up, whether it's today or at convention. It relates back to how and why we do church now the way that we do. Lakeview Church Grantsville, right? There was a trust building time there. There was, a year and a half, 2 years, where our conversations weren't about Jesus. Right. Our conversations were about doing life together. The things we were doing, they weren't hitting us with the Bible over the head. Oh, here's some unbelievers that we're going to Bible thump them. That was never a thing. We literally just had a chance to do life with people of this different faith. Right. And honestly, it was very rarely, if ever, spoken of. But what was happening was we were witnessing a life that was different than ours. It makes me remember 1 Peter 3:15. We're always to have an answer for anyone who asks, what is the hope that lies within you? Right. Fun side note, verse 16 says, always do this with gentleness and respect. A lot of people forget that part, right? Yeah. But as I think about that verse, I'm like, well, who in my life is going to ask about the hope that I have within me if my life isn't close to theirs? I have to be close enough with them in a friendship relationship, in a life relationship, for them to be able to see hope in me, and ask. And that's literally what happened. I had no idea at that time, of course, it was fulfilling scripture. It was a scriptural relationship. Right. I had no clue, but I see it now. We were just doing life together. And along that way, we got a chance to see tough things happen for Jana and Dave, tough challenges. We got to see how they handled weird relationship situations. We got a chance to see how they handled health problems. We got a chance to see how they handled all these life things that we were facing too. And they handled it differently than we did. And so we ended up initiating those conversations. What's the deal with you guys?
Mm-hmm.
And then they were able to, now we had opened the door to our own hearts, and they had a chance to put the gospel in there.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of us were raised, like if you were raised kind of in the 80s, 90s, there's just this evangelism push for, if you die tonight, what's going to happen? And knock on someone's door and tell them about Jesus. And it's kind of this like a little bit in your face, kind of this big, there's a lot of pressure for a one-time conversation. Usually maybe with someone it might be a stranger. Like I think there was just that in the Christian world for a couple of decades. That was kind of in vogue. But I'm guessing if I was in your shoes, especially with the hurt that you had from LDS, if Dave walks up to you on a Tuesday and says, "Hey, where are you going? Where are you going to spend your eternity?" I'm guessing that friendship probably wouldn't have developed, right?
No, so, that would have been a brick wall. Absolutely. And
it's a weird thing, right? Because I know that as Christians, especially if evangelism is something you're really passionate about, you want to have those conversations. They're scary, and maybe you're worried about how it's going to work out. But if your faith is real and important to you, you want to have those conversations. But what Dave did is like, even if it takes 2 years, that is how it actually works, right? I mean, can you just tell us more about that and more how your personal story or other examples you've seen of that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, it's actually turned into a core value that we have at Lakeview Church, and that is we actually go over these. We have 5 core values, and we go over them every Sunday morning with our whole volunteer staff, right? And one of those core values is that we trust the process of God changing us from the inside out, and that really is a process. I mean, it's different for each one of us. Each and every one of us have different hurts and different life stories, and all of us. Those stories are awful. The world is awful.
Right.
There's no way for us to know how deep scars of life run with people. We have to trust God to be in that process. We have to trust that the Holy Spirit is working on people even far before they come to a place where they can hear the gospel, where they have ears to hear.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes that process might be real quick. Maybe you get a chance to see somebody place their faith in Jesus in your life. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just someone who plants seeds and waters seeds, and that's okay. We have to trust that process and really hand that over to God. I think there's a core difference between, as Christians, as we look at ourselves, there's a core difference between us saying it's my job to save people, and it's my job to represent Jesus and let the Holy Spirit save people. Like this, right? I'm not your savior. I can't save you. Jesus can. All I can really do is reflect his greatness and be a testify of him and show you. I can point to the throne, but I can't fix you. Right. And so that's what I'm saying. You talked about that push in the 80s. We've all seen that. Get out there, stand on the street corner with a sign. That stuff doesn't work, guys. Yeah. This is about investing in people's lives. If the lives of all unbelievers was valuable enough to Jesus for him to come to be our savior when we were still his enemies, then can we as believers who are saved by his grace, we're filled with his life, can we look at unbelievers in our life and say, yeah, their life is valuable enough to me that I can invest in it for whatever time it takes, whether or not I ever see the end result.
Yeah.
And I think those are 2 core different ways to look at the reality of the situation.
And so that's great. I love that. And so I guess I want to just keep diving that a little bit more, because I know for some people listening, maybe they might have a little bit of guilt, or maybe some churches, like if they're church leaders listening, maybe they're discouraged because they're not seeing these droves of salvations that they wish they had. So what's that balance of, like, we of course want to share the good news, but we want to do it in a way that's effective. So if someone is maybe someone listening has never led someone to Christ, and they want to live a life like you're talking about that encourages people to ask questions, and they have those friendships, but they don't see any fruit. So maybe it's an individual who's never had those conversations, or a church that's just plateaued. They feel like they're doing the right things, but they're just not seeing the results. Like, how do you live in that tension? Does that make sense?
Sure. And again, my answer is going to be intentional. We have to be intentional with what we're doing. So let me back up so that people because what I'm about to say, especially for other church leaders, might go, "Oh man, what's this guy? This guy's, first of all, he's a rookie.
Yeah,
What's he talking about? He doesn't know what he's talking about."
Yep.
We have to ask ourselves, what exactly is the purpose? What are we doing? So, when we see churches plateauing all over the place, and it is happening around the world, right? I mean, Christianity, Pew Research, big tons of information out there. The Christian church is in decline rapidly, badly across all denominations.
Yeah.
That doesn't, on a fundamental level, that doesn't make sense, right? Because the good news is the best news ever for all of humanity, and it is every bit as relevant today as it ever was during any kind of a revival, right? In fact, it's more relevant today than it ever was. And so this just doesn't add up. So we have to ask ourselves some intentional questions. And the preface that I want to make is this, what I'm about to say comes from the fact that we live here in this county in what would be considered an unsaved, unreached country. So let me give you a number that might be shocking. Per capita in my county, there is less than 1% of the population that identifies as an evangelical Christian.
Yeah. Wow.
Less than 1%. That puts us on par with Syria and Turkey.
Wow.
Okay. Yep. So this is a mission field. We have to look at it that way. Basically, it faces us with the reality that the church cannot grow from existing believers. They simply don't exist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we will either grow from new believers or we will fail to grow, period.
Yep.
Okay. Now with that background at Lakeview Church, we've had to say, okay, why do we do church? Why? And, yes, people can't see me. You mentioned that, Jeff, you kind of look like a rock and roll guy. Yeah, I am. Look, Matt, I'm going to be super honest with you. I don't like church. I don't like to go to church. Pastor Jeff doesn't like church. What? Hold on. We just did an earth-shaking thing. Yeah, Pastor Jeff would rather go water skiing personally than go make church noises on Sunday morning. Okay, there, I just threw it out there. Everybody can take it for what it is. However, if church has purpose, if the what we're doing on Sunday morning has a reason, that's a meaningful reason, now it has a different connotation all the way around. So we say that on Sunday morning, what we do on Sunday morning is exclusively for the guest. Everything we do is for the non-believer on Sunday morning.
Okay.
Now that's a whole different paradigm, right?
Yep.
What about edification of the saints? Well, that happens throughout the week. That happens as we're equipping one another and building up one another in our faith, and we're putting our faith in action. However, Sunday morning, we have a building, we have resources, tons of resources that have gone into this. We have a building that sits in the middle of our community. Why? For us to pat each other on the back? No. Yeah. I know I'm sounding kind of harsh here, but it's just the harsh reality of where we are.
That's good.
We have to make this is our beacon. This is our ability to swing these doors wide open and give people a chance to meet Jesus. So we do things very intentionally Sunday morning for our community. We understand the culture that we're in. And so this is for all churches, right? Understand the culture that surrounds your church 10 blocks in every direction.
Yeah.
And over time, you may look back and say, well, our church is 100 years old and we used to have 300 people here. Now we have 13. Well, we need to look around that 10 blocks in every direction and say, how is the culture in this spot, this geographic spot, changed over that time?
Yeah.
And are we in a place where we are ready to receive the people that are in the culture that are around us? And so, the answer to which I've kind of muddied up now, but your question, look, it's about intention, being intentional, and specifically and intentionally operating in such a way that we can meet people and have these conversations. How am I going to meet unbelievers? Where?
Yeah, right.
I'm proud to say, and this might be a shocking number, I'm proud to say right now, our little budding church, which, Sunday to Sunday, we see about 100, 110 to 85 to 110 people on any given Sunday. And roughly half of those, not quite, 30% of the people in the room are currently not professing believers in Jesus, but they're in church on Sunday morning.
That's
Why?
Awesome.
They're there because they're received. We've done everything on that Sunday morning experience to be able to receive them and for them to be able to invite other people to come and hear about this Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's, if there's one place where we're currently being really successful, it's there. Now we have to be careful as leaders not to water down the gospel and not to step over certain lines,
Sure.
so that we meet our culture, right?
Right.
But there are many things we can do to say, look, arms wide open, doors wide open. We see you, we know you, and we're ready for you. Come on in, and let's be friends, and let's come reason together, and let's hear about this Jesus and this amazing good news for all people.
Yeah, man, that's incredible. I love that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because another question I had, I think, is another interesting part of your story is you finally, you have this faith conversion, you're ready to talk to Dave, and Dave basically says, don't come to my church, which I think is just, it's sad, but it's also like really good awareness on his part. So tell me, I want to hear a little bit more about that. And especially now that you've told us about your church a little bit, like what kind of churches should we be building? Right. And if a person listening is in a church where they feel like they can't invite their friends, what do we do with that? Do we need to find another church that's like where we send our friends, or do we need to do the work in our churches to where they become more of that kind of church? Or is it good to have both? Yeah. Okay. Tell me about that.
Absolutely both. Well, let me give you a little bit of culture. So from my perspective, and thankfully David lived in Utah his whole life. He understood the culture, right?
Okay.
Extremely conservative. So an LDS church service is extremely conservative. An organ or a piano only, hymns only, like no crazy music, no nothing. Now, music wasn't going to be the problem, but it was just for me personally, and I think he understood that. But we had never stepped foot in a Christian church. We are now brand new believers, and we've never stepped foot in a Christian church. So culturally, my only understanding of what a Christian church was from movies.
Okay.
Like, I'm thinking of Steve Martin in that big rhinestone jacket doing the tent revival movie. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah. Gospel choir, the collar, the pastor with the collar. Yeah. The whole thing.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
And so I'll never forget it. We're walking in the parking lot of SMCC, about to walk into this church. Heather and I are both just shaking. Like, we're terrified to walk in here. We have no clue what we're stepping into. And her hand is shaking. Mine's clammy. And about 20 steps from the door, where we can see some greeters standing there, and they're looking excited to meet us. Here comes some new faces,
fresh meat.
And she turns and looks at me just with dead serious in her eyes, my wife, and she says, if anybody tries to slap the devil out of my forehead, we're leaving. Like, right.
I get it. Yeah.
No concept of what to expect. And so the answer to your question is both. I think that it is contingent upon all of us, whether, say that somebody who's stepping into youth leadership in your youth group is online and listening, and you don't feel like your youth group is a place that's ready to receive the people who you're in school with. Or that they may be unnecessarily offended before knowing the gospel. Like that's craziness, right? Well, then if you have somebody that you're investing in your life and they're ready to step in, guess what? It should be your responsibility to find a safe place for them. And it can be your responsibility to bring that up to the other leaders and leaders who are above you, to say, hey, here's a concern that's come up. Here's the situation that's come up. Can we pray about this and see if there's culturally things that we can do to be ready to receive this person, my friend? God's put this person on my heart. I've invested in them, but I don't feel like here in our church is a safe place for them to land because ABC might happen. Those are conversations that should be happening. And I think for all of us, regardless of our positions in church leadership, if we get to a point where we say, nah, that's nonsense, we're just going to do it the way we've always done it, that's short-sighted. I think that all of us should be able to have the humility to take that to the Lord and say, Lord, are there changes that we need to make because the world around us has changed? Are there different ways that we can be your hands and feet? Are there different ways that we can be the open arms that welcome people in who need to know about you? And guess what? I think for all of us, we're going to find that answer is yes. That answer is yes. There are things that we can do, certainly. I'll give you one example, which will seem just weird maybe to some people, but when Lakeview Church started, and that's a part of the story we haven't talked about, I was on the task force with Pastor Phil, who's our lead pastor. And I was the only guy on the local task force, a bunch of MB pastors and me.
Nice.
And so it was a great honor to be able to be there. But one of the big conversations that came up as we were initially setting up the foundations of Lakeview Church in this community was a conversation about whether or not we would pass a collection plate on Sunday morning. Now, culturally, I was able to put some input on that, and Pastor Phil understood the concept. But culturally, that's a problem in our area. Passing anything person to person down the pews, and I don't have time to explain it, I won't, but it's a cultural problem. It's an area where it will invoke certain emotions from people in the LDS culture that we don't want. Okay. Now, so that's one of those things where we can ask ourselves, well, is this an essential part of the gospel that we pass a collection plate on Sunday morning? Yes, no. If no, then how else do we handle collections? Right. And so that became a conversation. It on the surface, it seems like, well, that's a dumb thing to talk about. No, it's not, because understanding again where we are, the people that we're preaching the gospel to, why in the world for something completely non-essential would I step on their toe when I don't have to? Right. There'll be plenty of places where in grace, the truth is going to smack people in the face. That's hard enough. I don't need to do it for them. I'm going to let God's word do that, not me. Yep. And so those are the questions that we can all start to ask, whether it's in a youth group, whether it's from the lead pastor down, whether it's from elders boards down. I think that all of us should always be asking and praying about those questions in our local community and in our local church. Jesus, how can we serve you best here? Here has changed since our forefathers planted this church, or whatever the case may be. Sure. How do we serve you now with who's here now? And I think we all have to live in that spot where we're ready to listen and ready to make changes, cultural changes. So, no, that's great. Gosh, Jeff, our time's going quickly here. I want to ask you at least one more question, but I wish we could talk for days probably. So this is just a quick little plug to come to the convention to hear more from Jeff. But as we begin to wrap up here, Jeff, I just kind of continuing your last thought, I think it's really helpful for Lakeview to have someone like you that's a little bit of an outsider from the Christian bubble, quote unquote, the Christian bubble. You knew the LDS community, you knew your local culture, you didn't really know church culture, which I think is helpful to have a pastor or a leader who's not so ingrained that you forget what the guest is seeing, right? So just from the people I know in our denomination or just locally here, I'm in Wichita, I know a lot of churches, their leadership has been around for a long time. They've been Christians their whole lives. They've been maybe at their church for a long time. Their core team might be quote unquote insiders who don't have some of that perspective. So if someone's listening, and whether their church is growing or not, if someone listening to you today is like, I need to do a better job of reaching that 10 block radius. We're a bunch of we know we're insiders. We're not really reaching out. What would you say to that pastor, to that leader, and how can they start that if that's something that they're not currently doing very well? I'll tell you that in my opinion, I think the very best for all churches, okay, regardless of where you are, I think the best thing we can do across the board is to start a testimony culture within our church. What I mean by that, Romans 8:16, the Spirit testifies with our spirit. Okay, we have this funny word, church word, testimony, testify. What happens if we actually think about this in a courtroom setting? There's a courtroom, a spiritual battle that's happening all around the world, and it's happening in a courtroom type setting today, right here in our neighborhoods. The world is testifying. It is giving testimony that God is not real. He's some, crazy idea that disagrees with Bill Nye the Science Guy. And Jesus he's Bill Nye's enemy. Right. And Jesus is a myth. That's the world's testimony. Here's what I would ask. And it's what I've started to really ask people, quote unquote, insiders, right? The 50-year, 55-year believer, the church lady. We all know the church, the sweetest lady in the world, everybody's mom. She's, if you're standing on the stage, that would be pulpit left, pulpit right, second row. You know the lady, right? Everyone's best friend, everyone knows it. Yep. I've started asking those seasoned believers, those rock solid gems in our churches, to share their testimony, to remember their life, their youthfulness, and the errors and the mistakes and the ugliness that they can testify of because they have an eyewitness testimony of what Jesus did in their life. Yeah, we do ourselves so much damage when we are not sharing our testimonies with one another. And I think in church culture, we've gotten to this point where, well, yeah, you don't want to hear my story, it's really bad. No, we do want to hear your story. You are washed and redeemed. We need those stories for our younger generation. That we need a mentor culture where those who have been walking with the Lord for some time are willing to share all the ugliness of their past and testify of what God did to redeem them in it. Yeah. That's the hope that this generation, this younger generation, desperately needs. They're begging for hope, and they're looking at us, church people. Oh yeah, those guys, they just live a sin-free life. They don't understand me. That is false. We just can't be afraid to testify of our own lives. And as it says in Romans, guess what happens when we do? The Holy Spirit, big S, joins with our testimony. And that's the most powerful thing we have. That we know that we have the armor of God. Well, what's our weapon? Our weapon is our testimony. Yeah. And to send that out, guys, we need to be sharing the hard truths and realities of what Jesus has done in our lives. That's the place to start it. If you're really locked down, it's like, guys, it's time for every one of us to share our stories, to stop being ashamed of our past and start lifting those up as trophies. Look what Jesus did. Yeah. And that's how that voice yells back at the world and says, no, you're wrong about God. Look at the miracle he's provided, that he's done in me. Yeah. And I am the eyewitness testimony of his miracle in me. Yeah. Each one of us can do that. And I think when we do, man, we change church culture. We change the perspective of outsiders looking in and go, oh no, instead of now seeing this prim and proper, perfect people, what I see is a broken, messy person just like me who's been redeemed by a loving God. Now that makes changes. Yep. We can't hide that. Right. Yep. So absolutely. that's my suggestion on places to start. If you feel like you're really in the mud, start talking. Yep.
Man, that's good, Jeff. Gosh, thank you. I thank you for sharing that with us, because I think that's a message that we all need to hear. And I love your perspective is so valuable. So thank you for being willing to share your testimony, because it's riling me up just to, think about things differently. So Jeff, thank you for your ministry in Utah, and thanks for spending time with us today. Guys, please sign up to go to the convention so you can hear Jeff tell more of his story or whatever you're going to talk about at the convention. Jeff, I look forward to hearing that. So thank you so much for spending time with us. We'll have to have you back, Jeff.
Hey, my pleasure. Great to see you, Matt.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Take care.
You are invited to join the U.S. Mennonite Brethren family for USMB Gathering 2022 this July in Independence, Missouri, near Kansas City. You will enjoy staying at the Stony Creek Hotel, which is nestled in a small oasis with a lake, waterfall, park, and walking trails. The theme is Increasing Impact, with a focus on evangelism and reaching the lost as we strive to make a real difference for Jesus in our communities, nation, and the world. Make plans now to attend the Biennial National Pastors Conference for Pastors and Spouses July 26th through the 28th, and the National Convention for Everyone July 28th through the 30th. Register today at www.usmb.org.
Well, once again, I want to give my thanks to Jeff for joining us for this episode and sharing his story. And like I said, I hope I'm the kind of person that's kind of like a Dave or a Jana, a friend in people's lives who people feel safe around, where they can ask some questions and maybe take baby steps of faith. And we could all, I think, learn a lot from Jeff's testimony there. And, not all of us probably live in counties or cities where, less than 1% are evangelical. That's pretty rare in America these days. But I think Jeff gave us some really good things to think about, especially if we have non-church friends that we want to invite to our churches. Some really insightful things for us to be thinking about. So again, Jeff, thank you so much, man. Really loved getting to know you, and I love what you're doing with your church there in Utah. And thank you for all of you who are listening today for joining us. Really grateful for your time. And as you heard throughout the episode today, that we'd love to have you sign up to join us for the convention. So please do visit the USMB website to learn more and to sign up for that. And over the next few episodes, we're going to be talking to the speakers that will be at the convention. So I think every other episode for the next few weeks here, we're going to sprinkle those people in so you can kind of get to know the people who will be speaking there. So if you're not already, please do subscribe wherever you're listening today so you can keep up with all these episodes. And we love your help spreading the word too. So especially if you enjoyed today's show, we'd love your help spreading the word on social media, or send some texts or emails around to help us spread the word. We'd really appreciate that. And with that, I think we'll wrap things up today. So thanks again for listening, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time right here on the Lead Pods.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.